Parental rights is the issue we're talking about today. Welcome to Our Watch. I am Tim Thompson, and we have a way for you to get involved in securing your parental rights here in California. So important to talk about these things. Today, we have two very special guests. We have Dr. Todd Donahoe, and we also have an attorney with us, Mariah Gondiero from Advocates for Faith and Freedom. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
I want to talk to you first, Dr. Donahoe, and just if you would, explain to the audience who you are and what this group is doing.
Sure. I'm Dr. Todd Donahoe. I've been a chiropractor serving the community of Mariah since 1999. My goodness, it's been a long time now. Along that path, I've been honored to serve many, many families. And families get to make choices in their healthcare. That's how healthcare works. And recently, with back to school, we've had a lot of families that have been struggling with that choice in healthcare being taken away from them. And so I work every day with these families, and have been doing so for many years, obviously. And the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here today is really a call to action. We're trying to support these families in two ways: in supporting their choice in medical freedom, as well as exercising religious freedom. Both of these things are important to everybody in our community and even beyond. So what we're trying to do today is really just get this message out about what kids are encountering at school. And as kids are going back to school right now, they are having to fulfill their vaccine requirements as part of the school registration. And California state law currently requires that there are 10 vaccines on the 17 that are recommended by the CDC schedule that are required for school entry in California. And there's a series of laws that have gotten us to this point today, where the only way that you can attend school, public, private, or charter, is having those 10 vaccines. And any choice in the matter has effectively been removed from parents. And that's the challenge that we're encountering right now.
How did this happen? I mean, you say choice is being taken away. So how did we come to this point?
California? It's a history. So in 2015 was state law SB277 that passed. Prior to SB277, school entry and vaccines, it was up to the parents. You had several options as you went into school. There was a philosophical exemption that could be exercised by the family. There was a religious exemption that could be exercised, as well as a medical exemption. The SB277 law effectively removed both philosophical exemptions and religious exemptions. What was really interesting was Jerry Brown was the governor at that time, and when he originally reviewed the law, before signing it, he sent it back to legislators and said, we can't remove a religious exemption. And it was very powerful in his returning it back to the legislature and saying, you have to rework this. And ultimately, it got back on his desk with the religious exemption still intact, and the governor ended up signing it. And so we did lose both philosophical and religious exemptions in 2015. In 2019, SB 276 came around, and SB 276 further refined SB 277 to make it even more difficult to get exemptions. The only exemption that was viable at that point was the medical exemption. And the medical exemptions have continued to be refined to the point where now in California, those who are eligible to write a medical exemption, pediatricians who are either medical doctors or doctors of osteopathy, they are limited to writing 5 of those letters annually in their practice. And that's whether their practice serves 50,000 patients or 5 patients annually. And so we have a big problem in that patients who may have a very clear and distinct need are not able to get an exemption, philosophically, religiously, or now medically. And so we are ending up with nothing but mandated vaccines for school entry. And it in my patients' minds and those whom I am honored to serve, it's not the best choice for their family. And this is what it all comes back to now, is this exercising of bodily autonomy, medical freedom, and religious freedom.
Now, there's recent case law in Mississippi that may have implications for us here in California.
Absolutely.
Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, so in April, there was a federal court that overruled the state law that was currently in place at that time, mandating vaccines for school entry. First, let me state, California was one of 5 states that were requiring vaccines for school entry. And in Mississippi, that law was challenged. And so the federal court came in and said, if you're going to require vaccines for school entry, which you can do, you must leave intact a religious exemption. So the federal court overrode the state law, and now effective July 1st, when kids were going back to school, they were allowed to attend again, exercising their religious exemption. And that's because it's quite obvious that the federal system sees it as a constitutional subject. You cannot take away a religious right to choose how you're going to manage your health care.
Let me ask Mariah about that. As far as the current state law here in California and case law here as it applies to vaccines, what's going on here?
Yes, so in California, it's not always the most friendly place when we talk about constitutional law. It's always an uphill battle. But I think what helps us is, as Todd was talking about in Mississippi, is we see across the country states really, working in the way of religious freedom. And also we have a Supreme Court that is very friendly to religious freedom. We saw that throughout COVID-19. And so although historically we've always had an uphill battle in California, what it eventually happens is when you have the Supreme Court ruling a certain way, eventually all courts beneath it have to follow the Supreme Court, including the state of California. The state of California has, in regards to these vaccine mandates, required kids to, get vaccines. But really, we haven't seen a challenge to SB277 or SB276 for a very long time. And since COVID, I think we've realized, well, we have an opportunity now to challenge these laws in light of the Supreme Court, in light of these other circuits ruling in favor of religious freedom. So it's a great opportunity to be able to challenge this law and hopefully, get it to the Ninth Circuit or get it to the Supreme Court, where we know we'll have a chance to overturn it for good. And also, California is one of very few states that requires vaccines without a religious exemption. And so that's another thing that's working in our favor when you have a state that's kind of an outlier.
So it's time, it sounds like it's time to challenge it. It's time to seize, capitalize on this opportunity we have. And so you and Dr. Donahoe want to do that, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what's the call to action here?
Well, I'm seeking through my own patient base and, of course, through your contacts as well. We have two things that we need. One, our families that have been injured as parties that we'll be seeking to be representing as plaintiffs. And we need some families that, I guess I'll let Mariah describe the details of what we're looking for. But additionally, we need financial support. This is going to be a costly endeavor. And so we need families that this means something to help out with a little bit from the pocketbook.
Right. Well, so how do they help out financially?
Yes. So Advocates for Faith and Freedom is a nonprofit organization. So you can support us by going to faith-freedom.com. That is our website. And if you want to donate specifically to this cause, you can note that when you're donating to our organization. And then also we'll need families, we'll need parents whose kids are prevented from going to public school because they do not want their child to take certain vaccines. That means you have an injury and you would encompass, the type of person we need for our lawsuits. So we would want you to reach out to us, and you can reach out to us at info@faith-freedom.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming here and being on the show today. So important that people have these calls to action, these ways that they can get involved and be a part of the solution, because certainly we see there's a problem. We all feel it. We all know it. And this is a way to get involved. So I want to encourage you to go to faith-freedom.com, get involved in what's happening. Donate to this lawsuit to make sure that this is very successful. And again, if you are somebody who may be a potential plaintiff, go to info@faith-freedom.com. Get involved. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Our Watch with Tim Thompson.